My uncle is a cop in a pretty sleepy town. He used to always go to the cemetery and take naps in his cruiser. I don't know why he did this, but it's just what he did. But he told me how, one night, he was awoken by a sound and it startled him. He looked out the window and saw this weird glow coming from about 30 yards away. He kept looking, thinking maybe his sleepy eyes were playing tricks on him, but it remained. He decided to go check it out, and as soon as he got out of his car, the glow disappeared. He still walked toward the general vicinity, which was a group of gravestones, to investigate. He didn't see anything strange, but just as he was about to walk back to his cruiser, he realized the gravestone he was standing in front of had his last name on it. He said it completely freaked him out, and he ran back to his car and locked his door. He admits that it's likely just a weird coincidence, but he also said that was the last nap he ever took on duty. I had a call to a residence for a mental evaluation, or 5150. Anyway, I get there and speak to a 50-something-year-old woman who states her 20-something-year-old son is under the influence of an unknown drug and keeps repeating that he can't go into his bedroom because there was an old man hanging in his room. She stated that she was too scared to go into his room and investigate it for herself because he constantly brings over friends that are drug addicts and is unsure if his claims were true or not. I then go speak to the son, who was clearly under the influence of a stimulant. He goes on to tell me that he was told by a spirit to not enter the bedroom because her father, dressed in his military Class A uniform, was hanging in his bedroom. I checked the room out, and of course, there was nobody hanging in the room. As I'm in the middle of explaining to the mother that there was nobody in the bedroom, a veteran officer arrives on scene to assist me. He pulls me aside and states earlier in his career he responded to this residence and that same bedroom. He had to investigate a suicide by hanging of an older male subject. He didn't remember all the details, so I looked it up in our report management system back in my patrol car. And sure enough, the officer was correct. The subject who died was a World War II veteran and had been dressed in his military uniform when he hung himself. In my mind, I always thought that when this family purchased the home, possibly this incident was disclosed to them. However, I thought the mother would have mentioned it to me if it had been disclosed to her. She was genuinely concerned about her son and the allegations. A suspect had held his girlfriend and her child hostage in their mobile home for quite a while. He fled during the lengthy time it took us to locate the residence, as lots of the lower end trailer parks in my area are labeled with a letter number combo instead of their actual address. He's reported to be in the wooded area by the trailer park, which was quite large. We established a search pattern and have canines running tracks on this guy. We finally find him deep in the woods, where he's sitting against a tree with a shotgun pointed up under his chin. Suicidal people who are holding themselves hostage are pretty common and usually have a positive outcome. As long as they're only endangering themselves, then we don't have to use force against them. We let the negotiator talk to them as long as they want, provided the suspect doesn't pose a threat to anyone else. In this case, he talked almost all day. Unfortunately, due to our position in the woods, we were unable to access any of the usual equipment we use on long operations. This became a problem since we were losing light, and the terrain prevented us from safely surrounding him without putting each other in potential crossfire. In situations like this, we use an L-shaped formation to keep from shooting each other. The downside is that it gives the suspect a wide path of escape. We let the negotiator talk with the suspect until it was almost totally dark, and it became apparent that he wasn't going to surrender. Since we couldn't allow an unstable subject to possibly flee back into the trailer park with a weapon, Command decided that we must physically intervene. Those of us near the apex of the formation were only about 10 to 15 feet from the subject. Since it was getting harder and harder to see him, and since he had not pointed the weapon at anyone but himself since he hit the woods, the plan, which had worked several times before and after, was to offer the suspect a pack of cigarettes and then toss a flashbang nearby. The team knows what's up, so as soon as the bang is tossed, we're already moving on the suspect. Humans have a defensive reflex when startled, where they will usually drop whatever they're holding and slightly extend their arms in front of their faces. This guy didn't react as expected and blew his head off immediately after the bang fired. We handled it the same way we handle every other horrific thing we see. We keep our game faces on while we're on scene, second guess the hell out of ourselves, then get drunk with a teammate and rehash the call out until we feel a little better. It's not the best way to deal, but there it is. I've been a cop for a while now, and this is one of the calls that still haunts me. So, I get a call for a domestic assault that had just occurred, and I learn that the victim is at the neighbor's house. I get there, and I find the female victim's throat has been cut from ear to ear. The neighbor is holding a towel up to her slit throat, and the victim is struggling to breathe. The paramedics are on their way, and I take over holding the towel for the neighbor. I'm trying to apply enough pressure to reduce the bleeding, but not so much pressure that I'm strangling her. It was a delicate balance. Quick law lesson. You know that there are laws against hearsay, right? Basically, I can't testify in court about the events that someone else told me, and I didn't witness. The person who witnessed it would have to testify. One of the exceptions is what's known as the dying declaration. If someone is on their deathbed and believes they're about to die, their statements are exempt from the hearsay rules. I have some serious doubts that this woman is going to live. I want to ask her who slit her throat. In order for it to qualify as a dying declaration, I need to be able to testify that she believes she was about to die. So, I asked her 2 questions. The first was, "Who cut your throat?" which she answered. The second was, "You realize that you may be about to die?" which she answered, "Yes." Our eyes were locked, and I still remember the emptiness in her eyes. Within a few minutes, the medic showed up, and my partner and I went next door to look for the suspect. The door was ajar, and we could hear a baby screaming upstairs. We went in with our guns drawn, and the metallic smell of blood was overpowering. We made our way upstairs, past smeared bloody handprints on the walls, and found the child upstairs. Thankfully, he was unharmed, and the suspect was long gone. Thanks to the excellent performance of the medical staff, the victim survived. I met with her a couple of weeks later, and I was very apprehensive to speak with her again. I had basically looked at her and told her she was going to die. When she opened the door, I could tell that she didn't recognize me. She had very little memory of what happened after she was assaulted. I told her who I was, and she hugged me, crying, and thanked me for saving her life. The suspect ended up pleading guilty, so I never had to testify as to what I told the victim that night. It still haunts me to this day. I'm currently 28, and I've been a law enforcement officer for 8 years in the southwest part of the US. My story is one of hundreds, but I selected it to be told because I still think it was my personal scariest moment. I was 24 at the time. I had dealt with countless dead people, murders, gruesome fatal wrecks, and saved a man from bleeding to death from knife wounds, pulled an elderly lady from her rolled over burning vehicle, tossed a bastard around after he was attempting to knife his girlfriend in their apartment, and ended up keeping her from dying. I had even faced psychopaths directly, staring into their soulless eyes, and heard them tell me ways they would hope to kill me and enjoy it. I talked a man with a gun in hand out of being stupid and pointing it at me or someone nearby, and he gave up and dropped it into a bush. I fought off pit bull dogs from biting at my legs while trying to detain their owner, who was actively throwing scalding hot water on his girlfriend. Such is life as a cop. But this day remains in the bowels of my soul. It was a Monday night, my Friday of a 4-day work week. Slow, as most Mondays during school times are. I'm parked with my driver's door next to my partner's driver's door. It's cold, and we're chatting it up about upcoming video games as our breath leaves trails of humidity between our cars. And then we hear it. The call that changed the way I think of houses forever. The dispatch calls for me and my partner, who belong to the sector where the address is. It comes in as a domestic violence, where the male forced the front of a gun into his wife's mouth and has now turned the gun on himself, making threats of suicide by cop. To clarify, no police officer ever thinks happily on the fact that someday they may have to kill someone. This is not our happiest moment, ever. We make cruel and unusual jokes, and sometimes in this nature, but that's a socio-defense mechanism to prepare us for those days. We get to the block and turn off our headlights long before we see the house. It's huge. A mansion of castle-like proportions. It seemed bigger in the darkness in which we arrived. We approach on foot silently and hear a woman screaming. We run to the front door, and out she comes, naked and bloody. She had a gunshot wound to her shoulder that she held a t-shirt to. Her words were, "He's got the gun to my daughter's head." My partner asked for more officers on scene and medical to stand by blocks away. Our sergeant was coming too, but we couldn't wait. Not after hearing that. The insides of this castle were the darkest I have ever known. My whole body was cold, but my mind was hot, and I could just sense pure evil. To anyone who doesn't know what this is like, I can never explain it in enough detail. Pure evil, you can feel inside your soul. It's like walking in a fog all of a sudden, where life and happiness are far away on the outside world and not known, where the only colors are black, gray, and red. We approached the door with our firearms at the ready. I had my M4 rifle as this was involving a gun. The upper hand really helps in these situations, but this time, it was irrelevant to the horrors inside this home. We ran inside and were confronted by a huge entrance area, of which we quickly took to both sides, waiting to identify this man's location. Then we heard them. Boom, boom, boom. Gunshots from somewhere inside the dark house. Upstairs, up the winding stairs with open banisters. We ran up those stairs as fast as we could. Then we heard the girl screaming, as if her insides were being forced outward by bare hands. We started to run to that door as fast as we could, and right before the door, we heard more gunshots. We saw flashes from inside the room. My worst nightmare was happening. I quickly realized I could still hear the little girl. We ran inside to a bloody disaster. He was dead, and the little girl was tied up, hogtie style. Blood was splattered all around the room. There were black candles and sacrificial things in the room. Thank God, the girl was unhurt. The guy had shot himself multiple times, 3 in the stomach, 3 in his chest, and I'd assumed 3 in the face, but the second was instantly fatal. I have no idea what was happening. I have no idea why the house was so dark, but the poor little naked girl was okay, and that's all I gave a damn about. She was later placed into state custody as a 2-year-old. Her mother, having satanic ritual tattoos, later admitted that they planned on killing the girl, who had no documentation for her birth.